Good evening. In compliance with Chapter 551 of the Open Meetings Act of the Texas Government Code as amended, I call to order a meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District for Monday, August 26, 2019 at 6 p.m. The board may meet in closed session to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee, including discussion concerning the timing, structure, content, and process for the superintendent's evaluation, purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, a negotiated contract for a prospective gift or donation to the district, commercial or financial information that the board has received from a business prospect or offer of a financial or other incentive to a business prospect, deployment or specific occasions for implementation of security personnel or devices, and or to consult with legal counsel regarding pending or contemplated litigation or a settlement offer or on a matter which the school district's legal counsel determines should be confidential, including receipt of legal advice related to the superintendent's evaluation and related issues, and including consultation with counsel regarding compliance with recent legislation, including House Bill 2840, in accordance with Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, Sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, and 551.071, respectively. We will move to the approval of the agenda. Secretary Ellens, do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Was that?
Having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Ann Teich to approve
Nope,
the agenda.
that was Trustee
Oh,
Letitia
sorry,
Anderson.
Trustee. Having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Letitia Anderson to approve the agenda. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously by those on the dais. Secretary Ellens, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag? To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now recess the open meeting and move to executive session in the board office. Do I have a motion to recess the open meeting
So moved.
and reconvene in closed session? Is there a second?
Second. Me.
Having a motion by Trustee Amber Ellens and a second by Trustee Ann Teich to recess the open meeting, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes unanimously by those on the dais. We will now recess the open meeting at 6:03 p.m. and move to executive session in the board office. We will now reconvene the open meeting at 7:08 p.m. Tonight, we have two recognitions, a partner recognition regarding 22 sponsors of the 2019 Back to School Bash, and we'll begin our evening by recognizing those sponsors. Dr. Cruz?
Yes, thank you, President Rodriguez and board members. I'm going to have Michelle come forward to introduce our honorees for today. This is the time that we want to make sure to recognize those individuals and organizations who help our students and our families every single day. So with that, we'll introduce Michelle Wallace.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Cruz, President Rodriguez, and trustees. I'm here tonight to ask for formal recognition of several groups for their support and commitment to AISD students. First, we will be recognizing 22 sponsors of this year's Back to School Bash. I'll ask the following sponsor organizations and guests to join me at the podium. As I call guests from each organization, please stand behind me and wait until the end, and we'll take a group photo. A+ Federal Credit Union, Eric Case, CEO, and Zenda Bennett, Business Development Officer, are here with us tonight. AAA, Amplify Snack Brands Skinny Pop Popcorn. Ascension Seton, Kate Garza, Director of Advocacy with Ascension, Texas, is here tonight. Austin Apartment Association, Emily Blair, Executive Vice President, is here. Austin Oaks Hospital, Angelica Reyes, Director, Business Development, and Michael Lopez. Bookspring, Emily Ball Caccini. I was going to do that with more confidence. Executive Director. Cap Metro, Sam Sargent, Deputy Chief of Staff. Chalk Inc., Charter Communications Spectrum News, Mary Wasson, Meteorologist. Children's Health Express, Colleen Matsky, MSN, RN, and Dr. Kimberly Avila Edwards. The Crockett Early College High School Cosmetology Program, LaSabra Moore and Suzanne Farrell. Cross Texas Transmission, Dell Children's Medical Center, Kids in Cars, Google Fiber, Half Price Books, North Lamar, Julie Castro, Assistant District Manager. Randolph Brooks Credit Union, Robert Rodriguez, Business Development Officer. The Anderson Foundation. The Neighborhood, Jim Cannon. Undies for Everyone. Been waiting all day to say that. Univision Communications, Urban Air Trampoline and Adventure Park, Jemish Kakani, owner, and Pinkal Kakani, Director of Operations. As you can see, it truly takes a village to support our students. It is my pleasure now to request formal recognition from the trustees for the Back to School Bash sponsors.
Thank you, Michelle. Trustee Matthias, is there a motion to recognize the 22 sponsors of the 2019 Back to School Bash?
There is. But before I make the motion, I would just like to say, y'all bring joy to our hearts. What a beautiful, beautiful celebration our Back to School Bash was, and it was because of you. All those smiles on the faces of students and parents, that was because of you supporting our team in that great, great event. So please know of our gratitude. On behalf of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is our great honor to recognize this year's Back to School Bash sponsors for their support and commitment to Austin ISD teachers and students. For the last 14 years, numerous Austin ISD departments have collaborated with countless community partners and local organizations to coordinate the annual Back to School Bash, which provides an engaging opportunity for all Austin ISD students and families to discover important resources that help pave the way for a successful school year. At this year's Bash, 22 generous partners continued their ongoing support or even increased their impact from past events. Partners pledged a total of $28,500 in sponsorships and donated in-kind gifts valued at $163,000. Let me try that again. $163,965,000, including bus passes, backpacks, school supplies, books, underwear, food, haircuts, and vaccinations. Finally, many of these partners volunteered their time to prepare for and sponsor the event. These types of partnerships are to be commended. It is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks all 22 Back to School Bash sponsors for their partnership and support of Austin ISD students and families. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So having a motion by Trustee Matthias and a second by Trustee Ann Teich to approve the recognition, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously by all those on the dais. Please come forward so we can meet you and take a picture with you, and thank you so much for your partnership. Thank you so much.
All right, I'd love to. Thank you. Thanks so much for the support. Thank you so much. You go on. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thanks for support. Sounds good. Good to see you. How are you doing? Good to see you again, right? You do the press conference and you come over here, so I appreciate that.
That time of year.
It all makes a difference, so thank you for that.
Superintendent Sanford.
Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate that.
He gets to tell me.
It's all
But that's not all. Next, we're excited to recognize our partnership with Office Depot. supporting students, teachers, and campuses with school supplies. Here with us tonight from Office Depot are Glenn Cromar, Director, Public Sector Partnerships, Patty Salinas, K-12 Vertical Market Manager, and Chris Whitaker, District Sales Manager. Thank you for being here tonight. It is my pleasure to request formal recognition from trustees for Office Depot.
Now, we're recognizing y'all tonight, but y'all have been partners for quite a few years and just did an amazing recognition and giveaway just this past, it's not even a week ago, right? It was last week, right? Exactly, at Padron. And so really did appreciate that. And I just love the way you also went about it with the music, the fun, the festivities, sort of this little star walk that all the kids were able to participate in. It was truly, truly an amazing event. And then again, of course, giving so much to our students, our families, and our teachers had some extra nice surprises. So that really just took it over the top. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz. Trustee Teish, is there a motion to recognize Office Depot?
There is. On behalf of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is our honor to recognize Office Depot for its support and commitment to Austin ISD teachers and students. In 2018, Office Depot launched their philanthropic community investment program, #Depot Difference, which has partnered with Austin ISD since its inception. Through a #Depot Difference program called Start Proud, Office Depot's Back to School initiative helps foster brighter beginnings for schools in low-income communities. Through this program and partnership, Office Depot has donated 3,000 well-stocked backpacks to students and dozens of pallets of classroom supplies to teachers, all through a celebratory assembly event. At the beginning of the school year, every student and teacher at Padron Elementary, which I have the honor to represent, the staff, the students, and the families of that school, received school supplies to help them start the year feeling prepared and proud. Additionally, Office Depot provided Campbell Elementary School with supplies as well, and Trustee Letitia Anderson has the honor to represent Campbell Elementary. So thank you. This type of partnership is to be commended. It is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks Office Depot for their partnership in support of Austin ISD students and teachers. So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Trustee Teish and a second by Trustee Letitia Anderson to approve the recognition, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion passes unanimously by all those on the dais. Please come forward so we can meet you and take a picture with you. Thank you.
Oh, perfect.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. Thank you.
Passing notes. Already? So before we begin our public comment portion of the meeting, I'd like to remind everyone about our BED local policy regarding signs or placards brought to a board meeting. They are not to be permitted to block the vision of those attending the meeting, nor the district's cameras used to record and televise the meeting. Signs or placards shall be allowed only behind the last row of seats or against the side walls of the board meeting room. So if you would help comply with that, we would really appreciate that. I would also like to add that in September, we will be modifying our public comment process in several ways to adapt to recent legislative changes. We would ask for your patience while we implement these changes that we hope will increase opportunities for comment. We expect these changes will include an online sign-up option. So please look for changes to the public comment information on the website starting in early September. So we'll now move to public comment. And I'd like to remind everyone that this is the time we dedicate ourselves to welcoming and encouraging public comments during our regular board meeting and to commit ourselves to active listening. Board members wish they could engage in a conversation with speakers on matters of concern and interest to the speaker that is not part of tonight's agenda, but in accordance with Section 551.042A of the Texas Government Code Legal, board members may only make a statement of specific factual information or recite existing policy in response to an inquiry, propose that the subject be placed on a future agenda, or ask that the speaker visit with staff about the issue. After the completion of public comment, trustees may request from the superintendent additional information, clarification, and/or follow-up based upon comments provided by any one or more speakers. Please also know that there are additional ways to communicate with the board, including emailing the board directly at trustees@austinisd.org. In order to provide as many opportunities for input as possible within the limited time period at this meeting, each speaker will be allotted 2 minutes with a maximum of 30 speakers allowed. Speakers may sign up by phone or in person. Again, please look for changes in these sign-up options starting in September. No substitutions or yielding of time to others is permitted. As you come to the microphone, there's a device that will light up as you move through your 2 minutes of allotted time. When the buzzer sounds, please make a final thought in one sentence. We ask that whether you come to give a complaint or praise, that you reference the staff member by position or by abbreviated last name. We ask all audience members, whether speaking or not, to please show respect for others at all times. Should you wish to offer additional written remarks that are not bound by time, please give them to the AISD officer on duty. Each board member and the superintendent will be provided with a copy. And the Office of Translation and Interpretation provides a Spanish language translator for audience members who need assistance when addressing trustees or need assistance understanding comments made to trustees during public comment. If you need these services during our portion of the meeting, please speak with the interpreter, Melissa Gonzalez, Spanish translator and interpreter, and she will repeat this message in Spanish.
Antes de comenzar la parte de comentarios del público de la Junta, nos gustaría recordarles a todos nuestra norma BED local. No se permitirá que los carteles o letreros que se hayan traído a una junta de la mesa directiva obstruyan la visión de los asistentes a la junta, ni de las cámaras del distrito que se utilizan para grabar y televisar la junta. Los carteles o letreros solo se permitirán detrás de la última fila de asientos o contra las paredes laterales de la sala de juntas de la mesa directiva. También me gustaría agregar que en septiembre modificaremos nuestro proceso de comentarios del público de varias maneras para adaptarlos a los cambios legislativos recientes. Les pedimos paciencia mientras implementamos estos cambios, que esperamos aumentarán las oportunidades de comentar. Esperamos que estos cambios incluyan la opción de registrarse en línea. Así que, por favor, estén pendientes de los cambios en la información sobre los comentarios del público en el sitio web a partir de septiembre. La Oficina de Traducción e Interpretación provee un intérprete de español para los miembros de la audiencia que necesiten ayuda para dirigirse a los miembros de la mesa directiva o para entender los comentarios que les hagan a los miembros de la mesa directiva durante los comentarios del público. Si necesitan este servicio durante otras partes de la Junta, por favor hablen conmigo, Melissa González, intérprete y traductora de español.
Thank you, Melissa. You know, before I call the first speaker up, I just want to say that I really appreciate you all ensuring that the sign and placards are not blocking the vision of those attending this meeting or the district's cameras to record and televise the meeting. So I really appreciate that. The first speaker is Ramon Maldonado, followed by Jessica Sukup, and then Carol Ayala. Mr. Maldonado. Jessica.
President Rodriguez and trustees. My name is Jessica Sukup. I am here talking about inclusive schools. The climate of these hearings and of our public discourse today sends a consistent message that we don't treat each other with enough respect and value each other highly enough. It's so important that we project the best example behavior in our schools. To that end, I applaud this commission's support for sexual education that is inclusive of all identities. It also has come to my attention that some schools have adopted forms and paperwork that recognize that not all families look the same. Removing gendered language that places judgment on families instead replacing it with parent 1 and parent 2 is an important first step. Adding support for the salutation MX, pronounced mix, would be a great next step. Because most communication includes pronouns, and because pronouns cannot be assumed, I encourage schools to ask the pronouns of parents and of students and make an effort to use the pronouns that are shared with them. Finally, as so many families feel financially squeezed, there are often more than 2 adults filling parental roles. Maybe it's a step-parent, a tia, a grandparent, or other adult as part of a committed relationship, but parenthood is hard, and the commitment of parenthood is important to be recognized. Allowing for more than 2 names designated as parents would recognize the importance of that commitment and allow the family to support their student without having to navigate paperwork morass that is that they have to currently. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Carol Ayala, and then Keith Hill, and then Vincent Tovar. Oh, Mr. Maldonado, is that? If you're ready, Mr. Maldonado, why don't you go ahead? We had called your name and we're
My
on the second
apologies.
person.
The audio's out there.
It's okay.
There's nothing out there.
Go ahead.
Good evening. I'll take off my hat this time. To the new trustees, if you have children in school and your school is failing, how would you do it? If you have kids that have dyslexia, learning disabilities, problems, what would you do? Put yourself in their place. I had the time to review my videotapes that I recorded of the board. And District 3, ma'am, thank you very much for speaking out for our children, looking out for our children. When you said Martin and Mendez need attention, thank you very much for that. And other things you say, just thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, I know it's hard, especially kids that have special problems, special needs. They need help. They need experts. When I hear that a school's not been troubled for 6 years, I thought it was just 2 years that y'all found out about it, since y'all say you're data-driven, that you would put intervention in those schools the second year. Don't wait 4 years to get that. You know, I mean, our children need You're in the people. I heard one of our trustees say you're in the people business. You're not in the people business. You're in the education business of educating our children. And if you take your job seriously, I mean, let me go back. You volunteer for this job. You have knowledge, credible education on all of y'all. I think you can solve this problem. I think AISD should roll up his whatever you call it. I'm so nervous right now, to be honest with you, but anyway, roll up your sleeves and work on these problems. Work on all these schools. You know, I wanted to speak about Mendes School, especially the teacher. She was the first Mexican-American teacher in ISD, but they didn't hire her because she was Mexican. And and in her house now, well, anyway, if you can do something for our children and help these schools in the black and brown community or all over Austin, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno.
Now?
Yeah, I just want to make sure the sign is not blocking anybody's view.
Yeah, and I want to,
Okay, thank you.
and nobody's going to be picking up their signs there.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Carol Ayala, and I'm a former teacher of this district. I resigned after being trained under the Welcoming Schools teacher program at Odom Elementary in 2016. I co-founded Concerned Parents of Texas because of the district's decision to bring in Welcoming Schools, an LGBT program that normalizes homosexuality and transgenderism without parental notification nor consent. Under the national sex ed standards that the district has adopted, your child will be taught the following lesson by a classroom teacher. It involves role-playing, discussing sexual scenarios without parental input. Number 1, Brittany's girlfriend wants to have oral sex with her. Brittany really likes her girlfriend, and her friends say that having oral sex will bring them closer together. Brittany agrees with her mom that she should wait, but she is scared of hurting her girlfriend's feelings. What should she do? Number 2, Carlos and Veronica got drunk at a party and had vaginal intercourse last weekend. Now Veronica wants to have sex again, but Carlos doesn't want to. What should Carlos do? Number 3, Natasha and Mark have been dating for a long time. They have had oral sex. Their friends keep asking when they're going to have vaginal intercourse. Natasha isn't sure that she wants to take that step. What should she do? This district teaches kids to say no to drugs, alcohol, smoking, vaping. Why not engaging in sexual activity? Sex ed is not mandatory by the law. Ask your teacher for the AISD opt-out forms and download the Liberty Counsel opt-out form from our website at www.concernedparentsoftexas.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Hill. Keith Hill. Michelle.
Board members, thank you for what you do for our children. As you consider the sex ed going forward, what can we learn from history? Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. C.S. Lewis spoke about chronological arrogance. Every generation thinks they're so much smarter than everybody that went before them. And that's dangerous. I'm sure we can all agree that the Jews have been persecuted down through history. Hitler tried to eliminate them. They have writers, I think, that we can learn from. I applaud AISD for their vigorous programs to avoid anti-Semitism. That's a good thing. So what can we learn from the Hebrew writers? Well, King Solomon is widely regarded as the wisest man that ever lived. He said, "Do not move an ancient boundary stone." He also said, "There's a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death." Isaiah and Daniel warned, pride goes before destruction. And Moses, he made them male and female. I think we need to be very careful telling God, you made a mistake. What message are we sending to children? Is God sovereign or not? That's what it comes down to.
Vincent Tovat. And after Vincent is Suzanne Kearns, and then Matthew Sheed, and then Dusty Harshman.
Hello, good evening. Happy new school year. Trustees, good to see y'all again. My name is Vincent Tovar. I'm a parent at Go Valley and at Lively. And I'm a little out of breath because we just had a press conference that I'm going to tell you about in a little bit. But first, before that, I want to say thank you to District at-large Position 8 trustee for a VITA clinic that we're going to get at Go Valley Elementary. We need that. We need our high needs communities and kids and families served. So thank you so much for that, Trustee Anderson. And for District 2 trustee, always being willing to meet with constituents and really initiating outreach to get feedback from those who agree and disagree on all sides of all issues that affect District 2. I wanted to thank you first and foremost. So I wanted to promote a press conference we just had at 6 o'clock after seeing statements on AISD's online dot exchanges, and now we're seeing them on these pop-up Facebook groups that are mirroring segregationist quotes from the civil rights era, and we wanted it to stop. So we had a press conference this evening called, it's a game show press conference called Who Wants to Be an Anti-Racist? And you can see it on Facebook if you go to Pride of the East Side, and the point was just to educate with how we can respond to these segregationist type quotes with anti-racist responses. I gave you an article as part of the school changes process coming up and September 9th, scenarios going public, because over almost 6 years ago, we came up with an idea. And this kind of talks about what's next for Allen Elementary after we kicked out IDEA charter schools. And if you go to the last page, that last quote, it says, we could try, what could we do with Allen Elementary? We could try to figure out how a school and a housing complex could share that lot, that could stabilize the community by linking public education and affordable housing. So we want to make sure we start that where that idea came from, our community, and that the district doesn't just completely take credit for our ideas like they did when they put Brian Miller on the face of saving Eastside. So please understand the history and where it was started to get housing on our lots. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Suzanne Kearns.
Hello, Superintendent Cruz and Board of Trustees. My name is Suzanne Kearns, and I'm the parent of 2 AISD students, and I'm speaking on behalf of over 1,200 members of the Informed Parents of Austin. I don't know about you, but I still remember my first crush in the first grade. His name was Richard, and it caused many awes from parents when I insisted on buying him a giant Hershey's Kiss for Valentine's Day. That was 40 years ago, but I can still remember the fluttery feeling in my stomach when I handed it to him. I'm sure most of us remember that first crush, and we reminisce that sweet phase of growing up when we see our kids going through these same natural rituals. Imagine how different that lovely Valentine memory would be if instead of thinking it was sweet, the adults in my life had shamed me by saying that my feelings were wrong or even a sin. Yet that's the message that groups like Texas Values and Concerned Parents of Texas are sending by asking AISD to remove references to LGBTQ terminology from health lessons. Based on their meeting that I attended last week, they deem words like lesbian, gay, and transgender as scandalous and a social contagion. These words are not scandalous. They're people. They're our kids. They're our friends, teachers, coaches. Excluding and stigmatizing LGBTQ students is discrimination. It puts these kids at risk for being one of the 72% who are bullied or physically harmed by other students, or strips them of their confidence in humanity to the point where they may even harm themselves. Like my Valentine story, these butterfly feelings start before puberty, and kids of all ages deserve to know that their feelings are normal and healthy no matter who they feel them about. As for older kids, some say that since the age of consent is 17, kids should only learn about abstinence until sex is legal. I would argue that we can warn kids about the risks of driving before the legal age while still teaching them to wear their seatbelts and where the gas tank is. I do agree with these groups that parents and caregivers should be actively involved in sex ed discussions. It's a shame that many choose not to. And for those kids, these lessons will serve as a lifeline to the critical health information. They will literally save lives. If these are their Texas values, I'll take AISD values: equity, diversity, and inclusion any day. Thank you.
Thank you. Matthew Sheed.
Hi, I am Matthew Shed with the group Informed Parents of Austin, and I'm here tonight because I am frustrated that there are state political groups that are trying to make our school district their political playground. These groups are trying to flood tonight's meeting and your inboxes to misrepresent the true proportion of people in our district who are in favor of reforming our outdated sex ed. They've been using word gymnastics to spin things like the fact that registration forms say parent or guardian into the idea that the district won't allow the terms mother and father. Or they misconstrue the standard of identifying diverse family structures as promoting kids to be gay. You also have political lobbyists showing up to threaten you with lawsuits. Well, being a bully is not a Texas value, and that's why I think we need anti-bullying in our curriculum. The speaker who brought up a scenario in the Get Real curriculum about a 15-year-old and 25-year-old in a relationship cunningly failed to mention that the reason that scenario is in there is to educate students that relationships with an age gap of 3 years or more have a higher rate of sexual abuse. Now, if someone's family values are telling their kids that my family is going to hell and salvation's in a chicken sandwich, that is fine with me. But it doesn't mean that their opinion gets to keep everyone else's kids from the facts. It's like in the cafeteria, and I have my tray, I'm trying to find a spot at a table, and I say, is this seat taken? And they put their backpack there and say, yep. They don't want us to have a seat at the table, and it's disrespectful and unhealthy to our community at large. Now, I believe everyone's welcome. I've had lunch with folks on the other side of the sex ed debate. And with one person, we talked about our families, our community, and sex ed, and you know how that conversation ended? With a hug. So I have faith there is a solution to this debate, but it needs to come from people within our district that have honesty and respect. So please, whatever decisions you make, please use logic, common sense, facts, reliable sources, and don't be swayed by manipulation tactics or just the loudest voice in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Dusty Harshman, and then Joy Butler, Jane Aldridge, Gary Moore, and Rebecca Harshman.
Good evening, honorable trustees and Superintendent Cruz. While there are certainly many hot button issues in AISD at any one time, this is kind of it. In the coming months, the board will approve a plan that will move more students from one school to another than at any time in the district's last 40 years of history. That said, there's been a development this summer that can offer a plan that produces a more equitable distribution of students. That's the hiring of Dr. Cynthia Hawley as the district's chief equity officer. And what did I say? I'm sorry. Stephanie Hawley. I'm so sorry. What did I say?
Cynthia. It's okay. Stephanie's good.
Dr. Hawley. I totally know. Sorry, Dr. Hawley. I should have written it down better. So with Dr. Hawley's presence and under her leadership, we have the opportunity to use many tools at the district's disposal to live into its definition of equity, to reduce the predictability of who succeeds and fails, to interrupt practices that negatively impact students of color, and to cultivate the unique gifts of every student. In the short term, the district has approved Dr. Hawley would offer her strongest professional opinion on the percentage of economically disadvantaged students that would be involved in school consolidations, and I hope you honor her opinion as she offers that to the board in the coming months. In the medium term, I hope Dr. Hawley's also involved in rounding out the local accountability system component that the district offers the state of Texas when they develop the state accountability grades that we've determined. I know the district is in development of their own local accountability system, but it could be improved. In the longer term, the document that I've given you represents the Denver Public Schools Superintendent's approach to equity in what she's determined to be the unified equity plan. And I think in that, if we have the spirit of unifying the various equity ideals that the district is bringing together into one plan, we will then become front and center in our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Joy Butler. Oh, it's yeah, Joy Butler. I thought I was going to ask for an ID.
I think I'm the real Joy Butler. There we go. Good evening. I'm Joy Butler. My pronouns are she and hers, and I'm a parent of an AISD graduate and a local faith leader. I'm here tonight to talk about evangelical churches that are renting space in our school district. First, I want to thank the trustees who have voiced support for the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual students in our district. You've done more good than you can know. It really helps to push back against messages like we heard tonight. Our queer kids are not a mistake. God loves them all, as they are. Due to the faithful efforts of the Anti-Fascism Non-Christian Church and other groups, a year's worth of protests on the ground culminated in the homophobic, transphobic Celebration Church being moved out of AISD into a public property. Protesters kept a weekly count, an average of 50 adult attendees for each service, so their claims of outgrowing the space may be good PR for them, but they aren't true. Trustees, I'm here to repeat a request for a full and public accounting of all monies gained from Celebration's rental of the PAC and Dobie Middle School. Please don't tell us that tens of thousands of dollars were spent on the Pride Parade without providing receipts, because the numbers just don't add up. Also, I'm requesting an accounting of all money from churches renting AISD property. Dozens of our campuses rent out their school auditoriums and spaces where our students eat, socialize, and play during the school year weeks. These are rented to churches that promote damaging gay reparation therapy, to churches with harmful theology that leads to increased rates of bullying and violence for transgender youth, and to churches that tell little girls that they can't be too ambitious because God only calls men to be leaders. We have an infestation of hate at AISD. You've said your hands are tied legally from kicking out any church, so do what you can and work to show how we can spend their money to counter the hate. No hate in our schools. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Jane?
Yeah, this time. I'm Jane Aldridge. I'm an AISD speech-language pathologist, taxpayer, and parent. I'm with my colleagues tonight to request time at a future meeting to discuss our compensation and workload. Our pay is far below national, state, and local levels for SLPs. This impedes both the hiring and retaining AISD speech therapists. We lost 20% of our SLPs from last year. This year, we have not been able to fill all of our open positions. We currently serve nearly 4,000 AISD students and their families. Our services are mandated through IDEA law, and we love providing quality services to our families. Our annual salary in AISD is as much as $13,000 below the neighboring school districts. We recognize that AISD participates in Social Security and that contract length can vary, but the salary discrepancy is not explained by those differences. Our mid-career pay is nationally in the bottom 10th percentile compared with other school-based SLPs, despite Austin's high cost of living. In addition, over the last several years, the number of students we case manage, evaluate, and treat for speech and language disorders has exploded. When we are not fully staffed, the district and taxpayers must pay costly contractors to provide mandatory services. Last year, AISD paid speech therapy contract providers nearly $600,000. Given the number of this year's unfilled positions, the district is on track to spend even more in contract fees. We did not receive the pay raise that C staff and physical therapists received last year. This year, we are not included in the 7% raise for instructional staff with 5 years or more of experience. We do not receive teacher pay perks like PPFT, extra pay for national certification, or a stipend for licensure or supervising student interns. We ask you to allot us time in the next meeting so that we can explain our role in AISD and why a salary increase for SLPs is needed to ensure that all eligible students receive economical, efficacious, and IEP compliant services.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Moore, Superintendent, Trustees. Thank you for hearing my concerns tonight over the graphic sex education proposal. Do we understand that as ASD taxpayers, we may be harming the mental health of some of those minors that we are exposing to with these deviant behavior, lewd role-playing, and concepts beyond their ability to comprehend in a rational and healthy method? Why is ASD attempting to expose our children to programs that introduces confusion and causes them to question their own identity? Why are we exposing our children to programs that seek to redefine, weaken, and undermine family structure? These are common good things. Why do we choose to mandate programs with inherent psychological risks that are not required by the State Board of Education? Is there a hidden agenda that we don't know about? I'd like to know. Do we understand that this commitment will be this committee will be the first wall of responsibility for a decision that will indeed expose these children to deviant behavior, role-playing, and concepts beyond a healthy level for them to adequately process? And we're talking 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. What's that? Starting at 8 years old. That's not right. Did you know that Texas recognizes only 2 choices for genders? Texas Department of Public Safety is one. Try to get something there. Are we teaching our kids 7, 8, 9, 10 years old that things that our government doesn't even accept or recognize? If a parent allows their children to assume a false self-identity, let them do what is required by the state of Texas. To change one's gender, one needs to amend a birth certificate or have a court order. This is mandated before they can go on. Otherwise, we recognize just 2 gender defined by X and Y chromosomes, and anything else is a distortion of the truth that even our government won't recognize. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Next is Rebecca. Next is Rebecca Harshman.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then after that, Doug Harrington. Sorry. Rebecca Harshman, then Doug Harrington, then John Doris, and then Emily Hirsch.
Hello. Esteemed trustees and Superintendent Cruz. Tonight I would like to share student feedback on 2 topics since I last spoke. First, the recent school changes think tanks. There, we discussed many issues in my group, but I felt that the issues we discussed were a little broad and they may have not directly informed district leadership on the sticky issues of school changes, like school closures, boundary changes, and new school designs that will create a stronger Austin ISD as a result. From my perspective, if we choose not to systematically integrate our schools, we need to explore choice schools that can do it by design. I've mentioned a civic leadership school that placed the social issues of our time front and center for its students. This would create an important and integrated space to bring up our future leaders. It would also be a good pilot for viewing the benefits of integrated schools. Next, I'd like to examine the recent Google domain restrictions on the AISD Chromebooks. This has been a problem for all high school students this week. A few of my struggles include not being able to email a couple of my teachers because they use other accounts. I was not able to reset my College Board password this week on my computer because it was tied to my personal Gmail account. And the reason why I was tied there was because I can't give them my student email because their emails wouldn't go through to my email. And I'd like to ask for you to please bring back our personal email accounts on our Chromebooks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
All right.
Thank you for letting us come and appear before you. It's a precarious position we're in our society. I was looking on a Google search today. I saw that about 4.5% of our population is recognized by Google as being in the gay population. This is a guess, of course, because nobody can really count that. It's up from an estimate of 1.7 a few years ago, and some estimates as high as 10%, and some guesses as high as 25%. So that would mean that there's somewhere between 75% and 98% that are not in that particular community. How can we get so focused on so few people as to design our curriculum according to such a small percentage of our population? How can we redefine our school curriculum with such teacher indoctrination as welcoming schools and not inform the 75 to 98% of the population as to what we're doing? It's a precarious position. It seems like there must be some kind of force, pressure put on you to encourage you to support such a unaccepted doctrine to be taught to our children. Well, I say you don't have any reasonable explanation for doing these types of things. You're the people that have the responsibility of what is allowed in our schools and what's not. This is a precarious position. Your responsibility over 80,000 children is a wonderful opportunity to support programs like Heritage Keepers or Work the Wait. That would be very supportive of families. So please take advantage of the wonderful opportunities that are before you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
John.
Good evening, Board. I want to start by thanking you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I also want to honor all of you as fellow brothers and sisters in humanity. We are all one brothers and sisters. I do not want to debate the sex education points today. Both sides know the arguments very well. However, I'm very concerned with this board about how and why you're hiding the facts about the sex ed curriculum and its related agendas from the majority of parents who would have great concern about it, and about the fact that you're pushing the views of approximately, just like he said, I found a percentage of 3.8% of the United States population. That kind of views are being pushed here. And about the fact that plenty of psychological research studies show beyond reasonable doubt that children's development flourishes the most in a family where there's a mother and father that are married and present to nurture the children. And about the Texas laws that this agenda breaks. This is Texas Education Code section 28.04 has quite a few in there that this law would actually break. I, as just one of the majority of concerned parents in this nation, want to give you one more chance right here, right now, to come back in line with the wishes of the majority of parents and families in the Austin area, and totally withdraw this sex ed curriculum and all of its hidden agendas and work towards accomplishing the heart desires of the majority of the parents in Austin. There are concerned citizens all over this nation watching what you all do with this issue, and we all do vote. So thank you very much for letting me speak tonight, and we do honor you guys.
Thank you. Emily Hirsch, and then Lori Mainig, and then Emily Sawyer, and then Charlie Lujan.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Cruz. My name is Emily Hirsch, and for the past 7 years, I've been known as the loyal Lanier librarian. At least until this past July, when my principal, with little fanfare, emailed the campus to tell us we are now officially Navarro. But when staff returned to campus earlier this month, and worse, when the students returned to campus last week, there was no evidence to show that the school had a new identity. To our embarrassment, as KXAN News reported, we were the only newly renamed school without a new sign. Instead, the students were greeted by a gaping hole where the school name should be. It took until today to have any sort of Navarro name in front of the school, but the gaping hole remains. The lack of change is evident inside the building, too. The name Lanier can be seen throughout on plaques, banners, and more. And when I asked one of my administrators if the district had set up a fund for us to purchase needed replacement materials, such as library stamps and barcodes that say Navarro, I was told to use up what I already have, which would take me years. Is use up what you already have part of the district's plan for the name change process? Why was it not part of the plan to make sure that signs were replaced before the first day of school? Where's the piece of the plan to educate the community about who Juan Navarro was, which is the question that multiple students have asked me over these first few days? And with the lead up to the name change taking the better part of 2 years, how could the change be so poorly executed when the time came? I don't place the blame on my principal. He was thrust into the position as interim just last spring, and he has enough on his plate, leading the AISD campus with both the greatest number of Title I students and the greatest number of English language learning students. For longer than my 7 years, our campus has felt like we're the forgotten stepchild of AISD's high schools, and I don't have to look far to see the neglect. The library's air conditioning has been broken since July, and wouldn't you know it, the library had the same problem at the start of last school year, too. I have supported your name change ideas from the beginning. I understand the importance of dismantling the pillars to racism in our society. I accepted the new name change when it was chosen, although I would have preferred something less jingoistic. And I know that change is hard, but to take away a school's identity, an identity which the greater school community asked to keep, and leave it with nothing is an insult. My hardworking colleagues, my wonderful students, and the entire Viking community deserve better.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily Sawyer.
Go to start. Good evening. I'm here tonight to speak to parents about the sex ed curriculum in AISD. I'm a concerned grandmother. You may not realize it, but there's an agenda to reach your children or grandchildren with sexual information that most adults my age do not even know. Many parents say they will hear about it or learn about it anyway. I say no. These little children are a blessing sent by God. Parents are the first line of defense against the world right now. Remove the parent, and you get what the world has to offer. I've seen the curriculum recently, and I beg you to please reconsider. Take time to either opt your children out of sex ed, or even better, get your school to show you what they intend to teach, and then decide for yourselves. It's time for mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and even great-grands to pause and make time to get involved. Did you know that the definition of abstinence has changed? Just like so many words these days. The word abstinence once meant to abstain from sexual activity until you were married. The new definition of abstinence seems to teach students to use any sexual act that does not produce a baby. So this opens the door to teach all kinds of sexual activity, many that your child has never heard of. Let that sink in. Did you know that there are 30 LGBTQIA plus 8 more letter books that have been donated to the AISD school libraries by the LGBTQIA community? Did you know that they sometimes read these to your children without the parents' knowledge? Did you know that teachers have been pressured to read these books and some didn't want to do this? Let's enforce the laws that are already on the books, and let's, as parents and grandparents, start over. There is no law, listen to this, there is no law that says we have to teach sex ed in school. There's not a law. So let's pause, skip a year, and let's get this right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A comment in the recent AISD school changes thought exchange read, quote, "If all schools had the same quality teachers, programming, and goals, it wouldn't be an issue," unquote. Now, what exactly the "it" here is referring to is not entirely obvious, but context points to it, meaning school boundary changes, or maybe even inequity in general. And we could certainly add to this thought, if all schools had the same sponsorships and PTA funding and social capital and endowments and on and on and on. So why don't all schools have the same of these things? Well, because racism and the racist policies that flow from it, the educational, employment, wealth, and housing disparities that constitute our current reality were no accident. We created them. We created them with over 200 years of slavery and nary a reparation in sight, with hundreds of years of affirmative action for white people, starting with taking land that already belonged to people and calling it discovery. 40 acres and a mule, but only for white people. The GI Bill, mostly for white people. The ability to unionize, for white people at first. Access to business loans, also only for white people at first. Access to mortgages, also only for white people at first. The ability to buy a home in whatever neighborhood we could afford without being literally terrorized, also only for white people. And on ad infinitum. Nothing about our current intellectual and physical realities when it comes to race is by accident. We will not accidentally solve these problems by holding progressive values or sharing internet memes or voting Democrat or putting Black Lives Matter signs in our yards or valuing diversity or having good intentions or even by not being racist. We will solve them by changing our own choices and behaviors around what we deserve or have earned. We will solve them when we are more worried about doing racist, bigoted things or making racist, bigoted decisions or enacting racist, bigoted policies than we are about being called racist or bigoted. AISD has an opportunity to bend that arc toward justice, and it's about time. We've been bending it the other way for long enough.
After Mr. Lujan is Vicky Porterfield.
Good evening, President, Vice President, trustees. I am a product of the Austin Independent School District, once a former gang member in South Austin. I graduated, went to elementary at Doss Elementary School, graduated from Bowie High School, and I want to thank you for raising me in higher education and educating me. I'm here to speak on behalf on sex education. You know, growing up here in South Austin, I remember Bowie High School standards. It set the tone for me to change my life. You know, since elementary school, taking me to the Austin Symphony and exposing me to change the radical the radical thinking that I once had as a gang member, and then join the Marine Corps, come out of the Marine Corps, and my values started to shift. And now I understand that it's so important. I thank you for allowing schools to have church on the property, allowing the churches to come in what you decided and have there. I'm all for that. But the sex education, it was appalling to hear what now they're putting in sex education on from 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds. I just wanted to make my voice known that it must stop. You guys hold the key to the city. You have the key to the education. And we got to stop at least. It was appalling when they read it. Please read. I advise every parent to read what's going on in the sex education, what's being taught and said. Me personally, my opinion, it cannot be tolerated. And I thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you. Vicky Porterfield, and then Deborah Leverett, and then Jamie Haynes, and then Barbara Buckland. So Vicky Porterfield, I'll go back to her at the end. Deborah Leverett. Jamie Haynes. Yeah. And then after Jamie is, again, Barbara Buckland, and then Edward Mancias, and then Kevin Foster.
Good evening, everyone. So as a middle school teacher, I can really promise you that students are already having these conversations. Students already have these identities. And, and that's coming in 6th grade when they're still 11. And so you know what else has a hidden agenda? Heteronormativity and whiteness. So on that level, in 1970, 56 of the 385 newly zoned students to the original Anderson, Black Anderson, are formerly de jure segregated high school. Anderson would later bear the brunt because of it of one-way busing, thus displacing African American students from their community. We know about the public works like I-35 leading to the decline in the neighborhood and a thriving Black business district. Disinvestment by the city, the movement of people and capital to the suburbs, physical separation of races, artificially depressed property values, making it so valuable today. Developers also displace our families to neighboring districts. Today, though, we see comments on the thought exchange echoing this sentiment, only using slightly more palatable rhetoric. But the message is still, we won't send our kids if you change their schools. City and public school facilities overpopulate the east side, having once served the purpose of de facto segregation of the races, ensuring students of color would not spill over the physical barrier of I-35 into wider enclaves. The city of Austin, neoliberal businesses like Oracle, and our own history in the district is one of displacement of people of color. Even in magnet programs like LBJ, Keeling, and Lively students keep students from resources reserved for magnet students only. We understand that some schools will be closing, but this is an opportunity to break from this larger history. The opportunity presenting itself has the potential to not be based on exclusion and exploitation of our precious Black and brown students. I'm asking our elected trustees and anti-racist allies at more affluent schools all over the district and throughout the city to show the courage our city council members are lacking and do what is right by the most vulnerable of the families we serve on the side of justice, in the name of equity, and for the sake of hope.
I'm Barbara Buckland, and I'm glad to be with you this evening, and thanks for the opportunity for speaking. I just want to speak about the Texas Education Code EDUC 28004, which stipulates that AISD is to establish a school health advisory council made up of individuals from the community who advise the school district. My understanding is AISD has not complied with this. It also stipulates that abstinence from sexual activity is the preferred choice of behavior for all unmarried children of school age, and that AISD is to teach abstinence from sexual activity before marriage as the most effective way to prevent pregnancy, sexually transmitted diseases, and infections. The material recommended by AISD spends 99% of its time on information relating to sexual risk reduction rather than avoidance. So AISD has not complied with the state code, which requires that before each school year, AISD must provide written notice to a parent informing them of if sexual human instructions are to be presented. That has not always been done by AISD. So AISD has not always complied and continues to choose programs contrary to these directives rather than programs such as Worth the Wait, which meet Texas standards. Checking the Family Watched International site, which I'd advise everyone to do that's listening, I was shocked to see that that organization is identified as a hate group. I want to say to you that if you believe in sanctity of life, two scientifically identified sexes, and that God made a man and a woman to marry and have children, you are automatically a part of that hate group. This proposed curriculum is global, has little to do with sex education, omits critical biological truths endorsing high-risk behaviors. Its goal is societal change. Its source is the United Nations and Planned Parenthood. To all of you listening, I say wake up, because time is short and your children and your families are at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward Macias. Edward Macias. Okay, so Kevin Foster. You don't see him. Larry Nelson. And then after Mr. Nelson is Robert Kibbe and Bernadette Willis. And then Ann Wynn. Nelson.
Board members, this sex ed curriculum does not support the 5 elements of rigorous science that would make it evidence-based and medically appropriate. You're asking parents to trust a program for 3rd and 4th grade that has not been tested, when there are allegedly evidence-based programs that the CDC has found to have detrimental effects on students and prove to increase sexual activity. See, it's your game. There are good programs in the market that follow Texas law that have been tested. AISD should not be No, AISD students should not be your guinea pigs. The 2018 survey was flawed and has only return of 7% of AISD population. The board is choosing to violate state law regarding abstinence, age appropriateness, parental rights, and is overstepping its authority and moral boundaries. Austin ISD is poised to violate federal law under the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, Equal Protection Clause. As this board seeks to redefine family, confuse biological gender, encourage risky sex choices, it is possible that families could bring a class of 1 claim as this curriculum subjects students to arbitrary government conduct by ignoring parents' request to adopt a curriculum that is morally, ethically, and medically appropriate for their children. The board and the SHAC are acting in conscious disregard for the families and opposition of the best interest of the students. Bottom line is, we're not going away, and this board is exposing the district and itself to liability.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Robert Kibbe. I don't see him. Robert Kibbe and then Bernadette Willis. And then after Ms. Willis is Anna Wen, Valerie Sterney, and then Eric Ramos. Ms. Willis.
Good evening. My name is Bernadette Willis, and I am here to offer my support of those who are objecting to the sexual education curriculum that's being offered for the Austin ISD. Thank you so much for your time and your patience this evening. I want to keep my comments brief, and I just want to lend my support to the option for parents to have an opportunity to share their input on the curriculum, as well as the opportunity to vote as to whether the curriculum should move forward, and to support those who say that we should definitely follow the laws that have been set before us. Anything outside of that would be a new precedent that should not be followed. And I also want to say that the curriculum being created should be done by those who have factual information and should not offer soft porn options that introduce our children to doing things that they have seen in other places. Parents are not being given an opportunity to teach their children and provide the identity that a parent should provide, not an ISD. If I teach my child that she is a girl, then that should not be challenged by the school. That should not be challenged by the teacher. The teachers who don't want to teach this are being forced to tell the children in their classrooms things that they don't want to tell their own children. And I don't think that that is right. Promoting the practice of such activity lends them to a life of criminal activity. If they are going to pursue this type of activity at their age, then they can considerably force what you're telling them is right on their friend on the playground. Bullying happens, and if it happens by name calling and racial activity, then it will happen with sexual activity. We hear about it and have heard about it today, and I don't think it will stop. So I would encourage the board, the commission, and those who have the power to make changes in this area to seek the law as a reference and parents as a guide.
I'm sorry, my mic was off there. Sorry. Anna Nguyen, Nguyen. Valerie Sterney. And then last is Eric Ramos.
Good evening, trustees and Dr. Cruz. I'm Valerie Stern, a proud AISD parent. Thank you for your time and attention this evening. In AISD, we have stated values of equity, diversity, and inclusion. We all need to ensure that we do the necessary work to live these professed values. As parents, this means not using our privilege and power to ensure that our children get the better end of the school change plan, while the costs and sacrifices are foisted on communities that have been historically marginalized in our city. As board members, this means thinking outside of our historical box and ensuring that our brown and black students are not expected to carry an undue burden of school closures. On May 20th, you voted to amend the guiding principles to include a cap on the percentage of economically disadvantaged students experiencing school closures after more information has been received and the equity officer has been hired. Our equity officer was hired 2 months ago, and the district has spent the summer gathering information from the community. The recommendations for school closures is to be released in less than 2 weeks, and yet we are waiting to hear about the cap. Has a cap been set? Did you solicit input on such a cap from the equity officer? The community needs to know if a cap has been set and what it is before the change plan is released. I look forward to having this information. We hope that our analysis of the proposed change plan released on September 6th shows that equity has been taken into account and that our brown and black students are not overly represented in the population experiencing school closures. Thank you in advance for leading our city to live more fully into our professed values and only approving a plan that will truly live out those values of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric.
Good evening, Board of Trustees. So, the past few years at many district events, I've noticed one key word that keeps popping up. That word is equity. We hear it over and over and over again. Recently, I was watching the movie The Princess Bride, and Inigo Montoya says a quote. And that quote is, "You keep using that word, I do not think you know it means what you think it means." And the reason I say this is because your actions do not always match the speech. And I don't necessarily mean about you individually, I'm talking about the district as a whole. And just so we're clear, the definition that I'm working from comes from Webster, and equity means something that is equitable or freedom from bias or favoritism. This year, we have a lot of big decisions to make. We have boundary changes coming. We have this school change process coming, amongst other things. So what I ask is that you keep this in mind and you make sure that your words that you are speaking match the actions you are making. We have a chance to turn around some of the wrongs of our past. We've had chances before and the district has squandered them. Let's not continue to do that. Please make the tough choices. And I know we have a new equity officer, but let's not forget, at the end of the day, we need to rely on our superintendent to lead the charge. To make these tough choices and have these tough conversations. And I hope you do. If he does not, though, the board, it is your responsibility to hold him to that and to give appropriate consequences should this criteria not be met. Thank you.
4, 5, 6. So there are 6 speaker slots still left, and so I'm going to repeat the names one more time before going to the list of alternates. Vicky Porterfield, Deborah Leverett, Edward Mancias, Kevin Foster, Robert Kibbe, and Ann Nguyen, last name spelled Nguyen. And if no one is here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the next speaker will be Sharon Armke, followed by Emily Hoyt Weber, followed by Jared Brackenridge, then Cuitlalak Guerra, Belinda Montgomery, and Lisa Flores. So let's see. Ms. Armke.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, President Rodriguez, Director Cruz. My name is Sharon Armke, and I thank all of you board members for volunteering your time to serve and protect all the children of Austin. And I do want to say we're all from one race, the human race, and I appreciate how Austin is, in my opinion, working toward that. As a teacher here in Austin for 20 years, I loved all my children of all colors, and they loved me. And I just want to say that's the goal that I have for Austin, that I remember and I cherish. As you know, when you were taking office, you swore to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the state of Texas. Now, my concern is that the national sexuality education standards that have been adopted by Austin ISD School Board are actually not in compliance with the laws of the state of Texas. The small number of people writing these so-called national standards, very small number of people, are all in some way associated with Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood actually opposes age of consent laws, such as we have in Texas. Instead, they use the term the sexual rights of children. This is so hugely important. There's a person in the audience who's already spoken tonight who's wrote a tirade on the internet about how she opposes age of consent laws, but she didn't bother to mention that to you tonight. Yes, underage minor children. May I suggest that you only uphold Texas laws and do not attempt to go around the Texas age of consent law, which is 17, by teaching children in 2nd grade and younger that they can give consent to sexual touching with a partner if it feels okay. The article I've handed out to you reports on a study done by the University of Los Angeles. This study reports that the steady teaching of LGBTQ ideology to children has had a result. Instead of only 1 to 2% of children experiencing gender dysphoria, in California now 25% of children aged 12 to 17 report themselves as gender nonconforming. Thank you for your diligence. Thank you for your courtesy in listening. I hope you have time to look at the research. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily.
Trans lives matter.
I'm sorry.
Trans lives matter. Protect black trans women. 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 There have been 16 murders. 16 this year. They're 22. They're 24. They're 27. They're 18. Protect us. You
take
We apologize for that. The next speaker is Emily Hoyt Weber. The officers just did. So the next speaker is Emily Hoyt Weber, and if Ms. Weber's not here, then it's Jared Brackenridge. Okay. How about
Jared's here.
Jared? You're here. Sorry about that, Jared.
Good evening. Oh, am I on? There we go. Good evening, trustees. I actually.
Yes. Why don't we take a recess break for a few minutes? Thank you. What's that? I know. It's like. Good evening. The board will now reconvene at 9:03 p.m. The board will now reconvene at 9:03 p.m. We appreciate your patience, and I just want to make a comment that this board expects a culture of dignity and respect among each other and with everyone here at this public meeting. And we would ask you for cooperation in our efforts to, well, we ask all of you all to help us in cooperating with a public decorum of a public meeting. I'd appreciate, and I thank you for your patience while there was attention paid to the individuals that were involved. With that said, we have 5 more public speakers, and Mr. Jared Brackenridge was next.
Good evening, Austin ISD Board of Trustees. My name is Jared Brackenridge. I originally came here to speak about something else, but I think that it's very important that we clear the air and we get the truths out there. For those people in here that think that sex ed shouldn't be taught in classes, as your sign says back there, you're trying to say that they're teaching porn education. However, you may want to watch in on your child because they're going to learn it some way, and you'd probably rather them learn it from a textbook that has been vetted rather than learn it on your own. Secondly, I want to dismiss this false claim that there's only a small percentage of gay, lesbian people. That's false, so you can get that out of here. All of these things that you guys are saying is not true. It all kind of relates back to racial segregation, right? Back in the 50s and prior to that, there was this thing that racial groups should not mix together. It was a law, right? So for you guys to sit here and say that it's a law that gays and all of that shouldn't be taught, that's kind of like saying that blacks shouldn't be in the same schools as whites and things like that. Get with the program. Stop trying to put your white superiority views on everybody. That's not how it works, basically. And then last but not least, I want to address the school name changes. I think we're trying to get off track here. There's still several schools within your district that are named after slave-owning individuals, such as Bowie High School, Austin High School, and there's a few others. Okay, so don't forget about those. With our new equity officer, I hope she doesn't lose focus of that as well, and that you guys actually do live up to your meaning, which is all means all, and make this an inclusive independent school district for all students. Lastly, I want to say this. I am an AISD employee, and I live inside of these schools. I know that there are LGBTQ students in there, and they need to feel included. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker Next speaker is Cuitlawak Guerra.
Good evening, board and Dr. Cruz. I came here to show support for y'all. The district will soon have to prepare an initial draft of a school closure or changes plan. You've got some very difficult choices to make. I hope you see this challenge as an opportunity to address the historical and current racial segregation in Austin and Austin ISD. The need to close, consolidate, or change schools is due in some part to under-enrollment. Many point to demographic changes in the communities that these schools serve as the cause. While that is undoubtedly true, so too is the fact that there are also schools that are overcrowded. I applaud the district's acknowledgement that changes should be taken on by the entire ISD. As a result, there are many parents like myself very concerned about potential boundary changes for schools, changes to vertical teams, and the feeder patterns. I am concerned, and I ask that we all remember and keep this truth at the center of the school closure plan. All children have the right to a high-quality education, as high a quality as we can provide. And to all parents, remember, you do not have a right to a neighborhood school. You do not have the right to a short commute. Parents and their sense of entitlement to these things do not outweigh the right that every student has to a high-quality education. Separate is not equal. We live in a multiracial democracy, and it requires a multiracial education. Students languishing in overcrowded schools will benefit from a plan that addresses the imbalance of enrollment, because they no longer will be one of 30 or more students in a classroom, but rather in a classroom where they can receive a higher quality education and be among students that look like the city and society we live in. Integrated schools east and west of 35 with balanced enrollments are by definition better schools than the current segregated system. We have Dr. Goodnow with social and emotional learning. We have Dr. Ward with cultural proficiency and inclusiveness. AISD has the tools and infrastructures to create the environments in a school that will benefit all students. Be bold, be brave, integrate Austin ISD, address imbalance in enrollment. Thank you.
Thank you. Belinda Montgomery.
Hello, board and trustees. Thank you so much for taking feedback on this issue. I have 2 students enrolled in AISD currently, and they have had a very positive experience with the health program at Covington Middle School. AISD prides itself on excellence education, and comprehensive sex ed is not only for a holistic education with their health classes, but also for comprehensive science and biology classes as well. Why be comprehensive in other aspects of education and not in sex ed? Open, loving, affirming environments of acceptance and safe places to love and learn and grow up, and feeling like you're not othered or not included does not provide an environment where kids can learn well. We need to incorporate this into the sex ed curriculum and provide them a holistic way of learning about themselves and about their friends and about their families. Families are not always combined of a mother and a father, sisters and brothers. That's just the way it works out. Unfortunately, God forbid something happens and family members, grandparents have to come in and care for friends. People are fostered and put in different brackets of a family. That's still a family. By no means is that not a family, but sometimes the other side feels like that is not the way it should be. Let's talk about what it's like to be a good friend, good boundaries, respect, what it's like to disagree with somebody and still be respectful in your engagement. These are all important lessons that I know have been provided in lessons, but we need to continue in providing these lessons, comprehensive lessons about sex ed, but also about engagement, about relationship on the whole overall. I did have the pleasure of reviewing the curriculum in the spring and feel like comprehensive education beyond abstinence is what we need. I really, really appreciate your time, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Lisa Flores.
Hello, Dr. Cruz, Board of Trustees. So I actually came here to talk about the gap in the inclusion of students with disabilities in the school changes plan, but I feel kind of responsible to give some fact-based data about sex education for students with disabilities, particularly students with intellectual disabilities. I really honestly don't care about the pushback you get from faith-based groups. Federal crime data says that students with disabilities are 7 times more likely to be sexually assaulted. If that were any other demographic, that would be considered an epidemic. So if we want to talk about liability, this isn't about sex for this population. It's a preventative, vital lifeline, as families are obviously not doing a good job of their ableism is getting in the way of seeing that people with disabilities will have a sexual life, sometimes not consensual, and sometimes it's their only sexual contact, and they are not equipped with the tools and information they need to defend themselves or to tell adults when it's happened to them. This is real. This is based on federal crime data. This is a federal epidemic, and students within our schools, churches, and homes are no exception. So I came here to talk about special education, but given the climate, I want to give you real information that is irrefutable. And I don't care what faith base or what church. It's happening in churches, it's happening in homes, it's happening everywhere. And we are beholden to protect the most vulnerable students with real information about sex. Sorry, I'm shaking. The rest of my comments have to do with some gaps in the inclusion of students with disabilities in school changes. I'd really like to invite this board to include disability in discussions about equity. I don't know if our equity officer has any experience with disability, but I would invite this board to hire an inclusive practices expert that is nationally recognized to advise us before we roll out school changes for a group of students that are not represented, not underrepresented, not represented. If not for my participation, no demographics data during the think tank meetings would have included students with disabilities and planning for their education in the school changes plan. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. So we have one more speaker left, and I'm going to ask Emily Hoyt-Weber if she's here, and if not, the last speaker will be Naomi Wilson. And if Naomi is not here, we will move on to Yunny Dang.
She left. She was the one that was insulted.
Yunny Dang. And then Kevin Gillian is the last speaker then. Can you hold on just one second here?
Absolutely.
I said before that we expect a culture of dignity and respect. So I just want to make sure, I'm hearing some comments in the back. I just want to make sure we're being respectful of each other in this forum. Mr. Gilliam.
Good evening, Dr. Cruz and Board of Trustees. I'm Kevin Gillian. I'm a father of a student in this district, as well as an educator. I sponsor a Gay Straight Alliance Club and have been for 10 years. I came here tonight to speak in favor of the new sex education plan that is inclusive for LGBTQ people. I feel like this evening has been overcrowded with a minority opinion about people who are LGBTQ plus. And I feel like a lot of the things that I've heard this evening sound like they come from the same philosophical legacy of a type of Christianity that seemed to be okay with slavery, a type of Christianity that was okay with segregation. They were praying in the schools while our black brothers and sisters were suffering in crumbling schools. Somehow that made everything okay. It sounds to me like I've heard a lot of voices tonight who were busy at a sock hop while their black brothers and sisters and brown brothers and sisters across the town were starving and suffering. And I feel like that philosophy is at the heart of the struggle against the progressive and forward-thinking type of sex education plan that the board here is putting together. I want to say that I appreciate y'all, and you know, we're in this together, and if we're in this together, we need to be in this for all of our students, and that includes the 26 students who attended my GSA meeting last week in the first week of school. So thank you. Please do the right thing, my friends.
This concludes public comment. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? So just as a reminder, since public comments are not specifically posted for discussion tonight, board members are legally restricted to either make a statement of specific factual information, recite existing policy in response to an inquiry, ask that the subject be placed on a future agenda, or ask staff to visit with the speaker about the issue. Trustee Letitia Anderson. And then
So I have a couple of requests. I spent a month, almost 2 months without AC. So, Dr. Cruz, I would like for you to look into the no AC at Navarro and why there is no sign. Also, the cap related to the guiding principles. And also, in the school changes process, what process or something for the most vulnerable students? And I've heard tonight, you know, a lot talk about a busing, segregation. Back in the 80s, I was one of those students who was bused across town. So I know what that feels like. And wow, just speechless, but that's my comments.
thank you, Trustee Wagner.
I was found the numbers that the speech language pathologists shared with us this evening quite compelling, and I wish that those were numbers that we had prior to our budget vote. But even with that in mind, I wanted to ask Dr. Cruz if you could ask your staff to provide comparisons of peer districts and neighboring districts in terms of pay scale for speech language pathologists, and also let us know what kind of cost impact for the next year's budget would be incurred by bringing the speech language pathologists up to the same pay bump that we did other skilled teaching staff. Yeah. Thank you.
Trustee Singh. You're good? Okay. Trustees, any other? Trustee Anderson.
Can you also look at the pay for subs? I think that needs to be included as well. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, trustees. We now move to the consent agenda. Are there any consent items that trustees would like to pull for a separate vote?
I need to let the board know that the administration has pulled item 13.6 and postponed it until September.
Okay. So since there are no consent items to pull, Secretary Ellens, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So I move that we approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 13.5, 14.1 through 14.5.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
So having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Teich to approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 13.5 and 14.1 to 14.5. All those in favor,
Nope,
please.
discussion.
Oh, sorry. Any motion is any discussion on that item? Trustee Singh.
Yes, item number 13.3 is the appointment of an executive director of the Transformation Zone. And I'm really happy, to vote for that person. I think the candidate is highly qualified, but it has been about 8 months since this board has publicly talked about the Transformation Zone. So I thought it might be helpful for Dr. Cruz to just give us a little refresher on what the Transformation Zone is and what it's not, where the money is coming from, and why we chose a district-led model rather than a charter school-led model, and how that's going to benefit us.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. So on the Transformation Zone item, the purpose of the transformation is to provide additional autonomies to make the best decisions for students. And it really goes on two key principles. One is the school is a unit of change, and the second is that those closest to and working with students, that's teachers, principals, parents, and students themselves, can make the best decisions around the appropriate types of programs. And so those are two key principles, PLES, that guide the development of the Transformation Zone. These schools, there are 8 in the Transformation Zones, are Austin ISD schools. They are governed by the Austin Independent School District Board of Trustees. They work under AISD guidelines and expectations. They are our schools. There are other models that we could have pursued. We did not. These are our schools. It's within our community, working under the Austin Independent School District, and will be accountable to the AISD board. The performance measures that will be included are aligned to the district's scorecard. They may also add additional measures, but nonetheless, they are aligned to the AISD scorecard. The approach we have taken will also allow for more collaboration, communication among Transformation Zone schools. And so there are just some key points while we continue at the implementation. And these schools were self-selected. So it's not, these schools are in and you're going to do this. It is not like that. We are Austin. So it was more so inviting schools to gauge interest and have information sessions. And what I see happening with this is that we're going to look at the implementation this year. The schools are developing their plans with their parents, with the teachers in their schools, in their communities, to again make the best decisions for students. And so it's going to be a learning year for us. We do not have everything figured out. This is new and it's different. If we had everything figured out, I'd say it's all going to be the same and we really don't need it. But I really do believe that schools and communities really want to do what's best for kids, and we want to do what's best for our students. I just want to allow for more autonomies for campus communities to do that very thing.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz. I also wanted to request Dr. Cruz and Trustee Rodriguez if we could consider putting a more in-depth discussion of the transformation zones in an upcoming work session. There's a few specific things that I was wondering about. One is specifics around the governance structure of the transformation zone, and specifically what the trustees' role would be in that, how the transformation zone fits into the school changes process, and also how teachers and other stakeholders will have structural opportunities to provide input throughout the process.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Trustees, Trustee Ellens?
So there are so many things I want to say. First of all, I want everyone to realize I'm really excited about the move next month. Our agendas are going to look a little different. We have 5 strategic focus areas that we are going to start grouping our items in. So I just wanted to alert both the trustees and the public to start looking for how all these items that we're approving, right now they look like, business and finance, but next month you're going to see them looking like student wellness, equity and inclusion for all, teacher wellness, fiscal stewardship, and the culture of respect. So we are hoping that by modeling some of these behaviors through our work, but also through our written documents, that we'll start being able to implement some of our strategic vision. So I hope Y'all are excited about that. I'm excited. With that in mind, one of the items on here, 11.11, for district-wide instructional software for teachers, shows up kind of boring under business and finance. But I want everyone to know that is an incredible new tool for the special education world, specifically in individualizing our learning through software programs targeted at that group. I did want to ask, is that just for special education, or all general education teachers getting access to that?
Let me ask for clarity on that, because I believe it is for special ed, but let me.
So just to clarify, I'll say that since it wasn't on the mic. Or you want to say it?
Go ahead.
Special education students, 504 students.
You can come on up.
Do I push something? Just wait.
It's
I'm a
on.
first timer at the microphone.
Yeah, it's on.
So do I push something or just begin?
You're
to
good.
say-
You're on.
Okay.
You're on.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Hickman, our new Executive Director of Special Education.
You're not.
Oh, I'm not on the mic. Okay, so there you go, right? It's my mind's a little bit somewhere else right now, so I apologize, but Dr. Hickman, our new Executive Director of Special Education.
Hello. The program will assist all special ed teachers and providers, so speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists as well, but also Section 504 students, specifically students with dyslexia, and students receiving specific intervention strategies for reading and mathematics and writing.
So thank you for that explanation.
And behavior.
And welcome to Austin
Thank you.
ISD. We're very excited, and I'm starting to already see your impact, and I'm very excited about it. I do want to put a plug that as we work toward inclusion for our special education students, it is really important that all of our teachers are getting access to this kind of incredible tool. So
Absolutely.
as we are moving forward in budgeting, and we're around Thrive, Read, Excel, I would expect that we are seeing more investments in that arena. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
she has hit the ground running.
Thank you.
So yeah, she was ready.
Dr. Hickman, don't go anywhere yet. Don't go anywhere yet. Trustee Cindy Anderson
Wait,
has a
okay,
clarification.
Just a quick clarification on what you
Yes.
just said. When Trustee Ellens asked about who would have access to that,
Yes.
we do have a lot of students in general education that are
Yes.
being taught by gen ed teachers. Wanted to clarify that that would also be made available to them, since obviously we support the least restrictive environment for our special ed students.
The program actually allows us to create goals and strategies for intervention, so the information housed in the system will be spread between every case manager and every provider of the student, whether that student is special ed or not. It's just a service identification as a special ed teacher as the generator of the goal. So when we sit in an IEP meeting, the special ed teacher is the one that has the login, but every person that touches that student will have access to the information inside.
Do all teachers then get training on it, or how does that work?
The special ed teachers will get training on it, and they will be the trainer of trainers, so they'll be allowed to support the rest of the campus in the implementation.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Owens, did you have another?
I do want to mention that along the change process and serving special needs students, and it was mentioned earlier about equity, this is also, of course, important for us around equity and serving our students with special needs. It will be a change process. That's exactly what Dr. Hickman's charge. It's not, let's leave it the same.
Right.
It's come in and look at things and see what's working and what needs to be modified, and calling it. I will need space. We will need space to do this work. It's very individualized, as it should be, and it has to be high expectations for all students. So as we implement, and I've actually seen this particular item, so I've seen the benefits of it that could be proved to be very beneficial for all of us. But it will be a change process.
Yes.
It will be a change process.
Thank you.
I can appreciate that. I am moving on. You could probably sit and let someone else. Thank you. The other two items on also under business and finance, and also very compelling in the equity conversation. And I'm just asking, maybe we get information in a board update, a little bit more than what's in the agenda on item 11.8. around the Southern Regional Education Board work, and item 11.10, the interlocal with Workforce Solutions Capital. I think it's really good work, and it's hidden back here, and it'd be very helpful for us all to understand it better. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. Any other discussion? If there is no further discussion, having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Teish to approve consent agenda items 9.1 through 13.5 and 14.1 through 14.5. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes unanimously. Let's see. Secretary Ellens, do you have a motion to approve agenda item 15.1 through 15.12?
Yes, I move that we approve items 15.1 through 15.12.
Is there a second?
Second.
And is there discussion? Having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Letitia Anderson.
No.
I'm sorry.
It was Letitia.
It was Letitia. It was Letitia. Having a motion by Secretary Ellens and a second by Trustee Letitia Anderson to approve agenda item 15.1 through 15.12. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed and all those abstaining. So the motion passes 8-0-1 with Secretary Wagner abstaining. Trustee Wagner, I'm sorry. Trustee Wagner. Let's see, Vice President Anderson, do I have a motion to approve agenda items 15.13 through 15.15?
Yes, I move that we appoint consent agenda items 15.13 through 15.15.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll recognize Trustee Tice. So is there a discussion? Okay, so hearing none, having a motion by Vice President Cindy Anderson and a second by Trustee Teish to approve agenda item 15.13 and 15.15. All those in favor, please raise your right.
Through
hand.
15.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me do that again. Having a motion by Vice President Cindy Anderson and a second by Trustee Teish to approve agenda item 15.13 through 15.15. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those against, opposing, and then all those abstaining. So the motion passes 8-0-1 with Secretary Ellens abstaining.
You get the title back.
All right, tonight we have two items under the superintendent's report. The first item is on Attendance Awareness Month. Dr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Rodriguez and board members. So September is Attendance Awareness Month. Mayor Adler has signed a proclamation about school attendance, recognizing the importance of making sure students come to school every single day. We want our teachers, parents, school staff, principals, and parents to promote attendance all year, but especially this month, to ensure that all of our students are off to a great start to the 2019-2020 school year. And that's, again, recognizing the importance of coming to school every day. We, as part of this, we do have toolkits that we're providing for our schools so that they can promote attendance and talk to students and parents, communities about the importance of coming to school every day, and also accessing resources that may be available to them as well. The next item under the superintendent's report is dealing with opening of schools. So we had the opening of schools, and yes, Trustee Ashley, you're in there, but they didn't get that you got the 3 targets down. I wish they had, but I think I have a picture on that. I was impressed. I was telling people that was actually my target, but we'll see how impressive that is, because it really truly was. I had a great first week of school. And that's continued on. I want to thank our trustees for participating in so many of the different events that we had scheduled throughout our schools in that very first week. I'll ask our community, what do high expectations, real-world learning experiences, student voice, and public speaking, parent connections and engagement, archery, mindfulness, life-size pandas, lentil tostadas, chickens, business partnerships, and dedication have in common. You can find all of these in our amazing schools. And with that, we do have a quick video that we want to share with our board and our community that truly highlights the best of Austin School District, and that is our students, our teachers, and the amazing work they do every single day, and of course bringing in our different partners who also, you'll see they've made some cameos. I'm keeping talking. I don't know if you're on already or not, but I don't know if I'm stalling or not, but there we go. How did it go? It was good? All right, sounds good. Have a good rest of the day. Let's go Bears! I got the R. I got on the we are. Here you go. Mucho gusto. Who wants to tell me about the robot?
Yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of cubes on a conveyor belt and then push it forward to make a home stack.
So you have to create everything. The whole mechanism. It doesn't come like this. You create it all. Is this something that you want to study later on?
Yeah.
In high school and in college? Is that great?
Yeah.
And some of the students ask you, just to figure it out, what do you say? Hi. You want to make sure that they're ready for life and their career experiences, college experiences, and that makes all the difference. So I present the superintendent point to you, and thank you so much for everything.
That's so nice.
How do you know I needed a hug today? You can tell, right? Beautiful. Hi. Oh, that's all right. Hi, Paul Cruz. I'm superintendent. I wanted to present you with this. You know, it's so excited. Every time for the first day of school, it's sort of like going back, making sure that all of our students are back in school, that our parents are here, part of the family, our teachers are here, and it's really just a lot of exciting opportunities, exciting feelings with our students, get to know their teachers, get to know their friends in their classrooms. So it's overall just a great day. We're here for our students and for our families, and at the end of the day, we want to make sure that all of our students feel welcome in our schools.
Two schools, one vision. Together we're on a mission. Now clap, 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 clap. Everybody.
Primaria de Pico, es un placer estar aquí con ustedes para platicar de los sueños para sus hijos y hijas, porque yo como superintendente yo estoy aquí en esta posición para eso.
You can only be a part of Link 3 if you're here. Okay. So this is my first year.
When the Austin School District provides access and opportunity, we are truly changing the game for our students and for our families. And that's what our approach is this year, about changing the game for our students. So that's just to highlight some of the different activities. I can't remember how many schools we visited. It was a lot. And there were also additional schools at the Garcia tie-tying ceremony. We actually had Randy Clark with Cap Metro and some of his staff members there. There's just so many different partners who showed up, didn't have to, but the important thing is they did. because they care about our kids, care about our communities, and that's one thing about Austin is we do all come together. We have some challenges. We do. I'd say that. But at the end of the day, we always need to be here for our students and providing that environment for learning, high expectations for all of our students. We have work to do, but we can never let off of providing the best learning opportunities for all of our youngsters every single day. So just wanted to highlight some of the events that occurred this past week. And yeah, once you show up at a school, you never know what they're going to have you do, right? Trustee Ashe and Trustee Ellens and Trustee Anders, you just never know what you're going to have to do, whether it's cheerleading or archery or both. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's all fun and exciting, and that's all very kid-focused. And just a big shout out to our teachers. You know, we are who we are and what we are because of you. You're the ones who do make this work happen every single day. Our teachers, our principals, campus staff members, parent support specialists, every single day. They did it today. They're going to do it again tomorrow. And they don't expect any praise or anything, but I want to make sure to acknowledge them in their work. So in addition to this video, of course, we do put as much as we can on social media so that others can see the great work that goes on in the school district. It is our teachers doing this every day, and of course, our kids. So with that, that concludes the superintendent report.
Dr. Cruz, can I just, I can't remember how many, we had a congressman, senator, state reps, police chief, first responders, community partners, all welcoming our students on the first day. I lost count of that, but I really appreciated the communities coming out and welcoming the students along with the partners that AISD has had over the years to ensure that they're focused on student success. So I just wanted to mention that that's another added effort that was done this year.
That was exciting. I should have mentioned that as well. That was actually before the school year started. And I've never seen that before. And I've worked in other districts. The good news is it happened here. And everyone just saying, yes, I'm going to be there because I support our kids and our community. There was really no second thought on that. They were going to be there. And several also showed up on the first day of school as well, to be there to welcome our students.
Thank you. Trustees, anything? Any other? So we will now recess the open meeting and move to executive session in the board office. Do I have a motion to recess the open meeting and reconvene in closed session?
So moved.
Trustee Teish, is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Trustee Teish and a second by Secretary Ellens to recess the open meeting, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously. We will now recess the open meeting at 9:44 and move to executive session in the board office. We will now reconvene the open meeting at 11:38 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Who said that? Trustee Tice. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Having a motion by Trustee Tice and a second by Trustee Ellens to adjourn. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes unanimously by those on the dais. The meeting is adjourned at 11:39 p.m. Thank you all for being here.